Why, hello, everyone, and welcome to our viewing audience. It is a pleasure to welcome you back to another series, another session of our Ed Talk series this afternoon. I am Andrea Ferrari, CEO and founder of Whole Schools International, and we have created this inspirational space to inspire conversations with experts in the educational field, opinion leaders, to discuss these unprecedented times in education. There are short and long-term consequences to what we are facing, and we in education are transforming, and at Whole Schools believe that well-being, happiness, and equity should be at the center of this shift in paradigms for sustainable and long-term change. We are here to raise awareness and give voice to our experts and opinion leaders in the field to guide our educational communities, our parents, our teachers, our students, so that they can thrive through these challenging times. And today we are very pleased to welcome Gabriela Gonzalez, who is the Director of Programs at Whole Schools. Welcome, Gabby.
Hi.
Hi there. And also welcoming all the way from Costa Rica, Ms. Catherine Scanlon, Head of School for the Blue Valley School in San Jose, Costa Rica. Welcome, Katie. Happy to have you.
Thank you, Andrea. Hello, Gabby. Nice to be here.
Thank you. Thank you. And we're honored to have Katie. Katie is a leader with heart. She has been leading us through times of crisis. And as she has taught us, leadership is a human activity that comes from the heart and that considers the heart of others. And we'd like to have a conversation today with Katie about why this is so important at a time like this.
Thank you, Andrea. It's my pleasure to be here. And I think that we are all learning new things through whether we're leading or teaching or guiding others, running a home. And it's very important to remember our human side at this time.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I know that Gabriela is very much in tune with that. And she understands why gratefulness, recognition, validating others' efforts, and celebrating successes might be important. Gabby, if you want to comment on this side of leadership and leading with heart.
Yes, Andrea, thank you. Katie, I think through the pandemic, we've seen students struggle. We've seen teachers certainly struggle. But then we haven't heard so much about what's happening with the heads of school, what's happening with the directors, the principals, coordinators who are in leadership positions and who need to guide teachers and students as well as parents. So when we talk about this challenging time, what is it that we're missing? Because I do see a lot of, communication in social media, in different outlets where people are just saying they're feeling frustrated, tired, and maybe not receiving the type of guidance that we need to give them.
Wonderful point, Gabby. I will use a Theodore Roosevelt quote to start and sort of summarize, I think, what is a really important point to answer your question. And he said that nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care. And heads of schools have been struggling as well, but we're given the challenge and the charge to keep our communities moving forward. And so we have to show strength. We have to show grit. We have to show care and knowledge. And it has been a time where we ourselves have become very vulnerable, all of us, but we need to more, I think, now than ever, create networks of support and be vulnerable and be committed to working through the difficult times together.
That's a really great point of view. I'm going to repeat that. Nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care. That's so beautifully put. Thank you for sharing that quote with us. It really makes us take perspective and thinking about caring and how we validate the way that others are feeling and recognize becomes very important. And it's a way to celebrate our success. So tell me a little bit more, Katie, about how we can live through this radical change while staying well ourselves. What does that translate to for us? How can we be well for others and be the best that we can be for them?
Andrea, you know, it's like in a family. If the parents aren't doing well, the kids aren't doing well. So I think that we have to be very conscientious of our own mental state of being. We have to recognize that we have great, awesome days, and there's some days when we ourselves may be the weakest link. And so what we need to do is oftentimes create self-care plans for ourselves, lead our colleagues through the creation of self-care plans. We need to focus on well-being, define well-being, talk about well-being. And sometimes we need to show the human side. And so there is a moment when perhaps as professionals, we don't always let our personality or our personal side shine through. And we need to take a lead, play games with parent ambassadors. Take a moment to walk your team through a game of emoji charades. Put yourself out there and model what people really need at this time.
Wow, fantastic answer. Full of joy and fun. Gabby, I'm sure you were going to comment because Catherine Scanlon had just led our leadership forum a few sessions ago on exactly this, leading for well-being. And the examples that you gave us were memorable. And I know that a lot of leaders have come to love them and apply them in their own communities. Gabriela, I think you were about to comment on that. Please go ahead.
Yeah. I just thought, don't you think it's true, Katie, that we didn't know how to do self-care before the crisis? That's always been an issue when we talk about schools and faculty, heads of schools. We tend to be very, careless about self-care. And then the pandemic comes and it just makes it even more obvious, the need to work on this. So what do you think how can we achieve this even through a crisis? The ideal would be that we had it and now the crisis just, shows it up. But in this case, we didn't necessarily have it. So how to learn on it, on the go?
I think we have to look for others and we have to be very specific about developing our own character. Being a leader is a learning journey. And we have to remember that by telling our story, by listening to other people's stories, we are reminded of the resiliency and the strength of the human character. And we grow through difficulty. Now, we've become quite comfortable. And so self-care perhaps was a given before the pandemic. And now we have to say, okay, wait a minute. Our circumstances have changed. This may be the hardest road we've ever navigated as professionals, as family members, as children, as parents, as friends. And one thing that we've done is bring in some inspirational speakers that have faced challenging moments, whether it be an adventure race that a person willingly signs themselves up for, or a hard circumstance that you went through that at the time you thought was difficult and it turned out to be one of the best experiences of your lives. And those people talk about universal values and universal characteristics. They talk about tolerance, about patience, self-confidence, grit, which is a very common term. And in Forbes magazine, there was an article in 2013 where resiliency was defined as creativity, confidence, and optimism. And those three words are very important. And so when we look to others who've gone through difficult moments, and when we talk about it and teach it explicitly, we learn that that is the universal human condition. And that when we're challenged, we bring out the best in ourselves and others.
Wow, you bring up a really good point about teaching around resilience. It really strikes me that many people are unaware that resilience is a skill, as is happiness. Many people are unaware that this can be taught from a very young age. It can be learned and it can be practiced. And it's a skill for life, just as lifelong learning. But it is our responsibility as educators to make our students aware of this and yes, to teach resilience as a skill. And actually bringing in those inspirational speakers is a great way to do it through concrete experiences that are grounded in what inspires students as well. So in thinking about resilience, do you think that this is a condition to achieve well-being, or that we need to have these dimensions of well-being first and foremost within our school? What does this look like in our school, Katie? I know that you, and I'm maybe jumping ahead a little bit, but you've had this epiphany moment where you've really understood what it means for our students to actually become the agents of their own learning and be responsible and committed. And that has to do with resilience, with making the right choices. Do you want to comment a little bit about that?
I think, Andrea, that the epiphany moment that you speak about is when I started looking forward and I started saying, where do we go from here? What's the lesson? What's so important for us to take out of this experience that knocked us all to the ground, that surprised us all one day from the next? And I think different people have processed the experience at different rates. And I read an article out of the University of Toronto that talked about the 6-month wall. That when you hit 6 months in any crisis situation, you hit sort of a level of despair that you're not quite sure you can overcome. You start to doubt yourself. Do I want to go on? Does this work or this experience still fulfill my purpose? Why am I doing this? This is too hard. I didn't sign up for this. Everything's changed. And so that is a real strong parallel to students along their learning path and their learning journey. It hurts to grow. Vygotsky talks about the zone of proximal, discomfort. It is uncomfortable to learn new things. So what we've done is look towards exposing that and saying to students, we're all going through this together. And this is what it feels like. This is what it looks like. And it's natural. So we make a choice. We make a conscientious choice. Andrea, the grit component is a muscle. And so I think that going back to your question, is this the development of that character, the internal drive to succeed, is the tool that gets us through. Because at some point you have to decide that you want to succeed. You have to decide that nothing is going to stop you and nothing is going to get you down. So we live through that hitting the wall moment. We reflect and we say, okay, let's get back out there and make it happen. And I think it's important to incorporate that into the future of education, because that's perhaps what we've been missing. We've got the academic content down. We've got standards-based education down. But have we really incorporated values, character development, and those types of skills that relate so directly to not only well-being, but also to success and happiness?
That's a wonderful way. And I love how you sum it up at Blue Valley School. There are 3 main things that a child needs to consider when making a decision. And I think I'd love for you to share that with our audience, because it's so true. And it's, oftentimes we just get so complicated when it can be so easy. Do you care to comment on that, Katie?
Sure. It's an interesting. Thank you for bringing that up, Andrea. When we went into the virtual life, we went within less than 24 hours. We flipped the school from on campus to 100% virtual, and for a long time, people asked me, "How did you do that? How were you able to do that?" And my first answer was, "Well, we belong to this awesome network of schools. We have." Partnership schools in Europe. We had contingency plans in place. We didn't believe this was coming, but we were forced to be ready. And so I gave all the credit to that sort of logistical, technical component. And then as we progressed through this time, I started to reflect and I thought, the philosophy of our school also contributed to our success. Why? Because since our students walk onto our campus at 3 years old, they are in charge of their own lives on our campus. They are independent. We ask them what they should do, not tell them what to do. What do you think you should do? And so that's where those 3 questions come in, Andrea. And we ask, starting in elementary, when a student is doing something or when a student confronts a difficult moment, we ask them, what do you think you should do? Ask yourself these 3 questions. Is it kind? Is it safe? Is it fair? And if you get a no to any one of those answers, you probably shouldn't do that. And if you get 2 no's, really don't do that. And if you get 3 no's, you better not even think about it. So our students grow up managing their own lives, their learning, their behavior, and the outcomes. We give them the space to make their own decisions and learn from the consequences. So when they become 17 or 18 years old and they're heading out into the world, they already know what it feels like and what can happen when they make a mistake. They know that they can bounce back from that. We have a discipline policy that starts fresh every 6 months. So it is very clear to them that their behavior, their mistakes, or when they stumble and fall, that's not who they are. That's who they were at that moment. And they can always recover from that. And they're always given a fresh start. So that component of the philosophy of our school and our students created students that were ready to face the challenge of going in their bedrooms, turning on a computer, and now learning in their bedrooms. And in addition to that, our teams, our teachers were dedicated and committed to making it happen no matter what. And our families were there to support us. It's the 3-legged stool. Nobody succeeds alone, and we did it together as a team. And probably, although very, very, very important to have that contingency plan in place, it may have been the least important component of our success.
Really glad you mentioned the families and the teachers and the other stakeholders. How do we think about them? And you have this amazing way that you always hold this 360-degree view of the stakeholders, and you connect so well with all of their dilemmas. I know that Gabriela works extremely well with parents and coaching and this whole other dimension that makes the school run smoothly. If either of you want to comment on that part of how we can connect to the view of the other stakeholders and the dilemmas that they're facing, this 360 view of the whole situation.
Yeah, my question, I think, connecting with what you said before, Katie, about student agency and allowing students to take the reins of the decisions of what they need to do. I think that has an emotional component because, what happened in the pandemic is we started to feel like we lost control. Like this thing happened and it just disrupted our lives and we were losing control. And I think, thinking about teachers, parents, not only students, this part of feeling like you are gaining a little bit of that control back, that's a way of helping, I think, or I don't know, from your experience, what can you share?
I think that, most schools pride themselves on saying we put students first. And we are a student-centered school. And I think that's very, very important. And we have always held true to that. But what the pandemic has made us realize is that sometimes putting the student first means you're working with the family first. or you're supporting a teacher first, so that that student can continue to thrive in the best environment possible. And so what that makes me think, Andrea, is around all of our stakeholders, we have to listen, we have to ask, we have to be ready to change, be flexible, and know that a student-centered school now maybe means something different. Maybe it means that we dedicate a lot of our time to teaching parent classes. Maybe it means we dedicate a lot of our time to making sure our teachers are okay. And so we really do have to keep the teachers, the students, and the families all equally supported. And so it's a lot of listening. We have to find out what are their needs? What are the needs of each individual entity? Because we all have to be okay for the school community to function and thrive.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Excellent, Katie. You mentioned a little bit earlier the characteristics of grit and how those are always somehow or other woven into the fabric of your everyday leadership. And now when you mentioned stakeholders, making sure everyone's okay and listening to what they need, it called that idea back to my mind. What is it about grit that we need to know, Katie, or we need to hold close to our heart?
So I think that when we talk about, again, from the Forbes article in 2013, which now we say, wow, that was a long time ago, perhaps that's not relevant. Well, I think that it's more relevant than ever before. And so what we need to remember are to monitor those 5 characteristics, to teach those 5 characteristics. And they are courage, being brave enough to fail and not get beaten down by that. So courage in the sense of not having a fear of failure stop or prevent you from what you're doing. Everybody's on a new path. Nobody really knows exactly what the right thing to do is. And so,
well, that talks about, making a mistake in the classroom. If you're not prepared to make a mistake, then what new things will you learn? So thank you for reminding us of that, of making mistakes, being part of it, and being courageous and brave. That's the first element of grit. Are there any more that we should remember?
Yeah, there are 4 more, Andrea, that I like to think about during the day or during a critical moment. The second one is conscientiousness. And this is the characteristic that is most likely, most highly associated with success. And that is to be conscientious and to be dependable, to be meticulous in what you do, to care about what you do, to the level of being impeccable, do your best. And also to have that sort of race horse mentality. I'm going to get there no matter what. I'm going to cross the finish line first and nobody can stop me. That goes along with endurance. Having the endurance to achieve a long-term goal means there are days when you don't achieve your goal, but you have to keep that long-term goal in mind. And you have to be able to accept those failures and those disappointments as part of the road to achieving that long-term goal. Many people get stopped because things don't go their way. If you stop working towards your goal because something doesn't go your way, you won't get there. And I think that's something that especially now parents love to clear the path and take all the obstacles out of the way of our children. And one part of our philosophy is that we encourage them to make mistakes. We encourage them by giving them the space and the freedom to make their own choice, to pretty much fall down sometimes. And so that eye on, keep your eye on the goal type mentality is, there's days when things don't go your way that you say, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm going to quit. But when you do that, you're quitting on yourself. And so that's an important piece to remember. Things don't often go as planned or go our way. The 4th component is the resiliency that we've talked a lot about, defined as optimism, confidence, and creativity. And the last one, which is so important in the classroom, is the quest for excellence versus perfection. Perfection is rigid. Perfection is unforgiving. But when you're always trying to be excellent or always trying to do your best, that's forgiving. That allows you to make a mistake and still be okay and move forward.
Sounds like a growth mindset that there's always room to improve. And I love what you said about making mistakes and then reflecting, then there's always a learning piece. I know that Gabby really wanted us to discuss a little bit about what are the qualities in, you talked about some days I feel I'm at this point as a leader, some days I'm over here in the continuum, and you've taught us a lot about the 5 levels of leadership, Katie. I know that Gabriela wanted to ask a question around that. Yes, Gabi?
Yes, definitely. I think we've all been analyzing with the different schools that we've had the privilege to be in contact with, that there are many types of leadership, and this crisis has made it clearer that there are some characteristics about that leadership that have helped certain communities to thrive and others not so much. So how can we inspire, or what can we say about those essential characteristics in a leadership position that should be kept in mind in order to help a community to thrive?
I think, Andrea, what you're referring to are John Maxwell's levels, 5 levels of leadership that were actually sent to me by a parent in our community during this crisis. And so there's 5 levels, and one moves to the next level. They build upon one another, but they certainly aren't only a progressive path. As you said, it's a continuum. So the first level is you, as a leader, you have the position. People follow you because they have to. You're the head of the school. The second level is permission. And that's when people say, okay, I will let you lead me. You've convinced them in some way. You've built a little bit of trust or confidence that they say, okay, you have my permission to be my leader. And the third level talks about production. You're advancing in the community. You know the organization. People believe in you enough that they will help you get things done, right? So then you're working together to produce in that community. The fourth level talks about people development, where you as a leader are bringing out the best in others. You are creating leaders within your community. Sorry. And then the fifth level is called, John Maxwell calls the pinnacle level, where people are following you for who and what you represent. And that is when you have earned the trust of your community. They believe in you and they look up to you to help them stay involved, stable, and successful within the community, no matter what their role is. And so, of course, we all want to be a pinnacle leader, and we never want to go back to, well, I just got the job, and so here goes. But there are days with different stakeholders that you bounce back and forth between, those different levels. And I think it's important that we realize that that's okay. And of course, we always aim for the pinnacle, but we know that it's a moving process, and we don't just accept defeat, right? We don't let those 1, 2, 3 days get us down.
Katie, what a wonderful way to sum up our conversation today and leave us with that growth mindset, that it's okay to feel like a one day and then evolve to, level 5, and it's interchangeable. Thank you for inspiring us with your leadership, leading from the heart, Katie. We feel it, and thank you for all this knowledge and for your joy in transmitting live with us today. All the best to you and the Blue Valley School. Keep on going. Woohoo!
Thank you, Andrea. Thank you, Gabi. So nice to be here with you.